today.
First,
Okay,
let's
here
get
we working. Yep. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm John Miglosh for the WDMA. We're going to be talking about technology today. Interesting article. I got caught up in it. So, fewer articles today. But first, some fun, and well, it's a kind of a serious fun. So let's try over here, and this is a public service announcement by Toyota, and I'll just let you watch it.
Don't hit the garage.
Whoop. Whoops, run over little brother. Alcohol reduces your hand-eye coordination to the level of an 8-year-old. Littler than 8-year-olds. I had a big bike when I was 6. Don't drink and drive. That's a public service announcement from Toyota. But my friend Ask Wappling is not impressed with it. It's a public service announcement from Toyota Brazil, although the subtitles are in English, so I'm not exactly sure. It says, "Listen up, kids. Drinking and driving is bad," Ask writes. Okay, you're about as coordinated as an 8-year-old, and those were like 5-year-olds, more like. 8-year-olds are on two-wheelers. I had a two-wheeler, like I said, by the time by the time I was 6, because I remember riding it down a huge hill full of washboard, almost killing myself. And we moved away from that house just a few months later, so I must have been just a little bit over 6. They constantly do rollovers in tiny plastic Jeeps or fail taking curves with their three-wheelers, okay? Oh, and another thing that's bad is editing together a bunch of hilarious viral videos that result only in scraped knees and teary faces to warn about driving drunk, which could literally kill people. Good point. She makes an excellent point. I warned my kids there when they were growing up. There was this ad that showed a fried egg, or frying in a pan, and then taking the pan and smashing the egg. It said, "This is your brain on drugs," or something like that. And the problem with that as a warning is that when the bad consequences don't happen, okay? In morality, one of the things about morality, one of the reasons we have morality is because consequences inevitably follow behavior, but not immediately follow behavior, right? Got it? So you might be able to drive drunk 20 times in a row. I also used to tease my kid that when I was a kid, drunk driving was not illegal, as long as you could keep it on the road. Drinking and driving was illegal. Drinking while driving was illegal. Let me put it that way. Having drunk or being drunk and driving was not illegal. So the world has changed a lot since I was playing piano in bars at 17. But Ask makes a great point there, that a warning that shows consequences is not necessarily the best warning. I told my kids, you'll get arrested, you'll get your driver's license taken away, you may kill somebody, but there will certainly be consequences, and there are. So good thoughts from Ask. Okay, inflation slowing growth for some startups. This was an interesting article from Modern Retail, Gabriella Barco. I was expecting it to be more dour, but they had significant studies. Direct-to-consumer brands have been battling to grow sales amid inflation, and rising prices are starting to show signs of thwarting growth. Okay? But they're slowing growth mainly in product categories, many of which saw triple-digit growth during 2020 and 2021. So one of the most prominent is home furnishings, and this was consistently mentioned throughout the article by different experts, and we'll try to mention all the experts. Are struggling to maintain the growth rate they saw at the height of the pandemic. Okay, well, yeah, of course. People were locked in their houses. They were stuck looking at their old furniture, and they had nothing better to spend their money on, and so they decided to fix the place up. It's not a big surprise, right? Health and beauty, meanwhile, remain resilient, and but some of the average order sizes, it says, Gabriella, is that her name? Yeah, Gabriella says that affluent shoppers have either traded down or purchased less frequently, hurting average order values. Purchasing less frequently usually helps average order values, to be honest. It's the frequent small buyer that hurts the average order values. Okay, so it's either one or the other, not both. I'm not going to put a line through it, but and many of the direct-to-consumer brands are turning to wholesale for growth. So they're starting to go back to the retail stores, which makes sense in a climate where you can actually go to the retail stores, right? But what's interesting is if you begin with a direct-to-consumer strategy in mind, if you begin by doing some direct-to-consumer and maybe a mix, there's one or two brands that mention that. The retailers, if they want you in the store, you can point out that, you only mail 1 million catalogs a year, which is a drop in the bucket in 100 million households. So only 1% might even see that you are direct-to-consumer. And beyond that, only 1 or 2% order. So it's just not going to hurt their retail business at all. But back 20, 30 years ago, companies got really upset when they were doing retail. I was tasked with doing a proposal for Chicago Cutlery, General Housewares, and we put together a plan for them to grow to, I don't remember, I think 10 million sales without external funding and profitable in 5 years. All profitable, every year profitable. And they were underwhelmed because they said if they lost one big retailer, they would lose more than all of that sales. They came to me and said, we're tired of it. I think this is when Kmart declared bankruptcy and was awarded basically all the inventory they had on hand at 10 cents on the dollar, which they could then sell for the regular price and use the money to buy Sears, if you remember those days. And they said, General Housewares said to me, every few years, some judge grants this to a retailer to keep them in business, and all of the suppliers take a bath. They said, we're tired of it. You might have a good relationship with the buyer at Kohl's, and all of a sudden the buyer changes, and all of a sudden you're out for no good reason. And they said, we want to control our own destiny. We want to be like Williams-Sonoma or Chef's Catalog. Okay, so, it would have made a lot of sense. They had a lot of brands. We probably should have done it, but I didn't understand the mission. And I was emailing back and forth with a cataloger yesterday, and they want to just dive in. They want us to give them quotes on doing the technology that follows. And I said, we really need to understand which technology or whether technology is what you need right now. And we really need some time because otherwise it is a complete waste. And you don't want that. And they've wasted a lot of energy and money with other consultants. And so I don't blame them for being gun shy. But the fact is that you have to know where you are and how you got there to have any clue of where you should go next. Anyway, so there's this emerging brands report, AMPLA, which covers all the transaction data, tracks billions of dollars of transactions from 300 or 400 brands, and it showed wellness to be the top spending category, followed by apparel. Okay. Now, that doesn't show whether it's growing or shrinking. Mike Grillo said that there was a spike in health and wellness the first quarter, but that's usually, I thought this was funny, New Year's resolution spending. Okay, food and beverage fared worse. The hypothesis is people continued to pull back non-essential grocery items. Hard to say. I'm eating ribeye steaks for health and wellness right now. Long story. Okay. Similarly, SMS provider Klaviyo released a spending report that shows signs of the lipstick effect, which I had never heard of before. With people trading down to smaller luxury items and focusing on self-care. So that may be consistent with the wellness. Okay. Health and beauty category saw an increase in order count, which could reduce the average order size if they're buying less per order, but more orders buying a huge amount. Health and beauty increased by 36%, but jewelry saw a decrease of 15%. I don't know if you can take much away from that unless you're talking about fine jewelry, which I kind of doubt, because you wouldn't buy fine jewelry on it, I don't think, over the internet. Grillo said the most surprising stat was revenue being up year over year among Ampla's clients by almost 30% over last year. But there's a 13% quarter over quarter decline. Well, what he means is that the spring is down 13% over Christmas. Well, that's not uncommon, okay, depending on what you're selling. It's very, very common. It just depends, and he said it could be seasonality. Well, it probably is seasonality. Sometimes these articles get into such depth that they completely spin themselves around and contradict most of what they're saying. Okay, Polly Wong said at Bilardi Wong, who also represents about 300 brands, said that e-commerce companies with average orders under 250 are doing better than their higher end counterparts. Okay, so people are trying to get their immediate gratification with smaller purchases. Okay, and but flattening, especially in categories like home decor. Sales being down 19% in April for our brands. This segment is struggling, to compare with the peak of the pandemic. Well, of course, they had just this incredible boom, or they couldn't sell it fast enough. And apparel picked up at the end of April, but average order dropped 7% from 7% growth to only 1% growth. Okay, again, they talk about decline in growth, which isn't the same as decline, just so you know. And people continue to spend on experiences rather than physical products. According to Klaviyo's data, Americans are now spending more on travel. And Wong said, I think it'll be a slow summer, because slow meaning for e-commerce, because travel is still growing, or rebounding, we would say. Rachel Roth, founder of Urban Skin RX, said that there's been a steady decline in direct-to-consumer and return on ad spend in 2022. And I didn't highlight much of what she said. Chris Salgado, founder of Men's Skincare, said that the company made a conscious decision to forego trying to grow only through DTC at the start. Again, it makes perfect sense. You're not going to get a backlash if you start them at least at some level. And so the retailers are aware of a puny effort at direct-to-consumer. Like even General Housewares was selling $100,000 a month just because of a toll-free number on the bottom of their fry pans. They also sold a line of cast iron, and they sold a line of steel cookware, kind of like those tin cups you see on the old Western movies. along with Chicago Cutlery. So they were doing a small effort. We could have ramped it up a lot faster if I would have known that they wanted to do it before the retailers figured it out. We also had a plan to keep the retailers happy, much like what Sears did with their catalog, giving the retailers a cut, or also delivering the product to the retail location for pickup by the customer. So Salgado said, we prefer a cautious way forward, keeping our he said that by doing some wholesale with direct to consumer, especially if you have your contact information on your product, he said it cut our acquisition cost in half. Very smart. But compared to direct to consumer, keeping our acquisition costs in line versus spending frivolously to compete for market share. Okay, good. Now this was an extremely interesting article by Malcolm Harris from Wired. Doug Rushkoff is ready to renounce the digital revolution. Now what I was hoping it was about was digital advertising. You know, because digital advertising is the cure to everything, as we found out in yesterday's show, right? If it isn't working, get more digital. Unbelievable, right? Okay, so there's Malcolm, and Malcolm has been a prolific author, and he's still a professor at Queens College, and he early on, he embraced the internet and the technology, saying it would level the playing field, it would be a disruptive force, it would let everybody have access to the marketplace, and that we could have peer-to-peer, sort of like Napster, instead of centralized control by big retailers or government or other things. He's come a long way from that. I dove into this article. I think we could look at some of the. His office is in an old building with very poor internet. He has to use Ethernet. When it's time for class, no students show up. He's teaching digital economics, crypto, NFTs, and the blockchain. Like it's almost obsolete already, because of what's happening these days. He urges his students to see through the social construction of money. He says a dollar bill is not money, it's a piece of paper we use to represent money. Although I would argue that gold isn't that much better. In fact, it's much less spendable. You either have a speck of gold that you have to convince someone is worth $20 at the grocery store, or you have an ounce of gold that's worth 20,000 or something, and how do you spend that? You could maybe trade a car for it, but it's all barter. So I would argue that money is what you make it. But his big question in his life's work is how power travels across the media landscapes. And right now, it's all digital. And so some of his students figure out he's a famous author. I was pretty excited in the 90s about the possibilities for a new kind of peer-to-peer economy. And I was involved with the first computers. We built a display for a trade show with a Bali gaming console, and the software was recorded onto a cassette tape that we would load into the Bali to run our program, and it had a horse race going across the screen, but we couldn't make the legs for the horse race because there was like a 300K limit to the software it would run. 300K. That's like it's like not even, it's like one page maybe, not even one page probably. And so it looked like a duck race. And people would come to the booth and they would pick which duck would win, and it was a random thing that would run the ducks across the pond, and then they would win a prize, whoever got the right set of ducks. It was a big hit at the conference, but that was what you were doing with computers in those days. And I remember going into my brother's room, who had written the program, and seeing characters just slowly going across a screen like that. And he said, "I'm talking with the mainframe at the University of Whitewater." And so I got dragged into the computer revolution at the very beginning, I would say in the 70s, and learned about programming in BASIC and such like that, and watched it spread. You know, I did a talk in at the New York Hilton on the Avenue of the Americas there, big convention hotel, and I asked to have computer monitors in the room to demonstrate some of the spreadsheets that I had built. And they said, "Why would anyone need a computer to do a presentation?" And for years I built slides by draping a black cloth over my head and shooting a 35mm camera at the screen, rather than paying the $6 per slide if you sent your PowerPoint out to, and in those days it was Harvard Graphics. So now he's gone pretty much completely against it. His latest book is called Survival of the Richest: Escape Fantasies of Tech Billionaires. Well, it looks like we're out of time. This is an enormously long article, which is why I'm late today. Actually, I wasn't really that late. But I recommend it. There's a few disparaging remarks about a president that really had nothing to do with recent bank failures. It was more about the techno billionaires who crashed that thing. But anyway, he basically says that he thought that technology could solve our problems first, and he's rethought that. And then he thought you could humanize technology, and now he basically believes that technology itself is dehumanizing and will end up back in the indigenous agricultural age very soon. So it's not very optimistic. But anyway, if you like and share, send it to your friends. They'll know you're smart. It's a very